This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Ross, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts in 3 Counts.
Cover! We got it, the new world champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts in 3 Counts is the podcast, baby! It's the real deal, baby!
Knockouts in 3 Counts starts now.
Ooh, what up? No, it's not a Tuesday. It's not a Thursday. Thank God it's fucking Friday. This is Knockouts in 3 Counts, though. And we've got quite the episode for you. Thanks to our buddy, the guitar hero, Mr. Justin James, for bringing me into Extreme Couture while I was down there. We've got the man himself, Gil Guardado. How you doing, brother man?
I'm doing good, fellas. How you doing?
Shit, I'm glad to be off work at this point. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
What about you, man? Anything good and exciting today?
No, I actually took the day off today just because I felt like it. I only had like one class scheduled, so I got one of my buddies at the gym to cover for me. I slept in, made my pancakes. It was a nice little relaxing day off, you know.
I'm not mad at that at all. See, we could trade that all you'd like. I mean, for those of our listeners who aren't aware, why don't you tell everybody what you're doing with your day job and where you're training people at and all that good stuff.
I am currently the head strength and conditioning coach at Extreme Couture MMA in Las Vegas. I've been the strength coach there since 2013. I've been there as an amateur and then a professional fighter since 2008. I spend my time making people strong, getting them in shape, teaching them how to fight, and having a good time.
So you were actually around the Extreme Couture days when they were kind of in their re-evolution, I guess you could say, into modern MMA, because they had fell on some harder times over at Extreme Couture, and it seems like as of lately they've got champions all across the board. So it's just the amazing turnaround that coaches like yourself and Eric Nixick have done over there has been amazing.
You know, it's funny. I was having this conversation with someone a couple weeks ago about exactly what you said, and that we had a dip. You know, we had a little bit of a downturn. We weren't producing champions, especially it was during the time. It was between the time that Randy retired and Robert Follis came in and took over a couple years later. But to all of us in the gym, it was just business as usual. It's like, okay, well, we just don't have guys that are champions right now. Big deal. It's like, nothing at the gym was different for us during that time. You know what I mean? Like, I saw the media and I saw the press and I saw what everyone was like saying and how it looked to everyone on the outside looking in. But to us, I mean, it was like, okay, you know, we're out of the spotlight for a second. So it didn't change anything that we did. You know what I mean? So just interesting observation, you know?
Yeah, it definitely didn't stop the grind on your guys' end. You can see that,
never.
What it produced in the long run, for sure.
All right, well, J-Bone jumping in the comments, Kyle with the dopest shirt. Shout out to Megaran and Wale and Kazim for hooking me up with the shirt when we was out there in Vegas at the Foot Locker. I am never too shy to turn down free stuff. So, yeah, you definitely need to go to Foot Locker and get you one of these because you ain't lying. The shirt shows you it's money. Good looking, J-Bone. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. But, yeah, man, so let's talk a little bit about that. You know, you talked about how for a while, you know, Extreme Couture wasn't putting out as many champions. Now, Justin and I were kind of laughing about this when I got there because I was like, you know, it'll be funny if Randy ends up being there by any chance, because if he asks if I'd ever been to his fight, the one fight of his I ever got to go to, it did not end up well, like we were talking about when I was there, because I was there when him and Brock Lesnar fought.
Ooh,
and yeah. That was the last time I was in Vegas was for that fight. And like, you know, speaking of that, you know, you guys had it just when I was there. I mean, at one time, all in one time when I got there, you know, you had Kevin Lee was there, Cynthia Cavillo was there. You had a past guest of our show, Cody Stamen was there. I mean, you guys have really got a roster of killers. What do you think was the change that really helped get some of these guys to come back to Extreme Couture? Because if there's one thing I've seen from the gyms here in Michigan, it really kind of seems like, you know, depending upon who's got the most talent at a given time, you'll see guys kind of move from gym to gym to gym. And I'm sure it's like that out in Vegas, because I mean, Vegas is the hotbed. So what do you think it was that kind of brought everybody back around?
So after Robert Follis died, in 2017, there was some big shoes to fill. And luckily, we've always had a lot of great coaches come in and out of the gym. Dennis Davis, who was already working alongside Robert Follis and, you know, churning out a bunch of badasses left and right. Dennis stepped up and, you know, started up in his game, even though he was already one of the best coaches in the business as far as I'm concerned. And then my man Eric Nixick came in and decided to really step it up. I've known Eric since I moved out to Vegas, since I joined Extreme Couture in 2008. And Eric was a student at that time, same as I was. So we trained together quite a bit. We became buddies. That's my brother, man. And then he became the general manager in 2013. He's one of the reasons why I got my job as the strength coach there. And then during this whole time, he was just learning from everybody. He was learning from Robert Follis. He was learning from Dennis Davis. He was learning from Ray Seffo, and he was learning from, you know, other guys that would come in and out of town. He's learning from Henry Hooft and the guys from Jackson Wink, and he's learning with Trevor Whitman and just absorbing knowledge, because Eric was always an athlete. He was a college football player and just always had a mind for athletic preparation. You know, his background's in football, so a lot of that comes from that, I think. But he just has this ability to be able to analyze information, techniques, strategies, and know when and how to incorporate that into someone's game. And even more important, knows how to communicate the information he wants to communicate to that person in a style of communication that they're going to respond to. And because of that, all of a sudden, we just started churning out just a new crop of guys that are just tearing it up on the fight scene. And, you know, a lot of guys who were looking for direction after Follis passed away, they started gravitating towards Eric because they started to see like, oh man, this guy really knows what he's doing. And then word of mouth spreads. And then all of a sudden people who left the gym are coming back and they start seeing all the great stuff that Eric's doing. And then Eric's on TV with the mic attached to him in the UFC fights, and everyone gets to hear firsthand the stuff that he's saying to these guys, and immediately gets to see the results of what he said get put into play in the very next round of the fight. Now the announcers, oh man, Eric Nixick called that to a T. And then now Coach of the Year 2020, Eric Nixick. And then in the running again, you know, 2021 Coach of the Year. And, you know, I think Eric was a huge piece of why the gym got put back on the map, so to speak. Because he'd just been there the entire time, just grinding and learning and getting better at his craft, which is at this point being one of the best coaches in the game, you know, so.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, I mean, hey, anybody that tells you they don't keep up on all the stuff that's going around, whether it's radio shows and all that stuff that does this stuff, you're a damn lie, because there's always something that you're going to find from somebody else. So I, for one, am always listening to MMA Today, which has got your very own Misha Tate on it, and past guest of this show, Ryan McKinnell, who's been on here with us a few times. I love listening to that stuff, and the reason why I'm glad you brought that up with Eric is because every time I've ever heard him come on any of the shows, whether it's for Fight Picks or when they had him on to talk about Ngannou and why, you know, they weren't running the fight with Jones, or when they wanted to do the interim title, the one thing that sticks out to me so much when it comes to Eric is just his mind for it. Like you can hear it when you hear him talk about fights. You can hear it if you listen when they're in somebody's corner. That's one of the things I feel like is the biggest differences with the best coaches versus, you know, your run-of-the-mill guy. You know, somebody might be good and get themselves into the UFC, but I feel like he's really stepped out, like you said, just because of his overall knowledge of the game as a whole. Because that's one thing that stuck out to me in the times I've heard him speak about MMA. I got to meet him briefly while we're there, but I definitely agree 100% with what you said, just from what I've heard even in interviews and things.
And also his ability to work with other high level coaches. I mean, you have pointed out about yourself, but like to use it as an example, when he was in the corner of Aljamain Sterling in his championship bout, it was him and Ray Longo, both from, I guess you could say, different spectrums of the camp, and both learning from each other in the corner. It was his ability to step in and not kind of need to be the flag bearer for every single corner, even though he is so well established, is it speaks tenfold to fans like myself, at least.
Eric sincerely is probably one of the most selfless guys that I know. He's a big guy with a big personality, but an even bigger heart. You know, I don't even know if he's going to see this. So, I mean, I can gush about him all I want. I love that guy, man. Seriously, like, the amount of time that this dude takes away from his family, his wife, his kids, all the other stuff that he could be doing, the amount of time that he puts into his athletes, into the gym to make the facility the best it can be, to make sure that all of us are doing the best job that we can for our members, to make sure that he can go out of his way to give the fighters what they need when they need it and the way that they need it. That's an ability that separates average coaches, like you said, to some of the best guys in the game. I mean, I still hear Eric talking to some of the guys when they're getting ready for fight. Okay, who do you want to be the person in the ring with you? Who do you want to talk first? Who do you want to say this to you? Do you need me to say this? Do you need me to sound like this? He will gather information from the fight. Like, what is it that you need that I can get the best out of you? This isn't about Eric at that point. This isn't about him being on camera. He's going to shine anyway, as long as the result is what we wanted in the first place. He understands that his job is to bring the best out of that person in the ring. And to watch him grow from a student like myself, who started, just a little bit earlier than I did at the gym, to grow now into one of the best coaches in the game, man. I'm so proud of that guy, dude. It's been awesome to watch his evolution through this whole time.
I know Kyle had brought up the question to you of what he thinks brought a bunch of the athletes back to you guys. I was wondering, I know you guys have a ton more athletes besides just UFC guys, obviously. But what, with you guys being in Vegas and being so close to the PI Center, how much did that have to do with having athletes start to move their way back?
There was some pros and cons about it. I remember when the PI first opened up, a lot of the guys that we had at the gym kind of migrated over there, because that's something that fighters have a tendency to do. When something's new and shiny, they tend to just go for it, whether it's a new facility or it's a new coach that's in town, or a new training partner or a new gimmick or whatever, right? Fighters tend to be attracted to the new thing. And I understand it, because they're trying to get whatever edge that they could possibly get. So something new might be something better, and they have to go try it out to find out for themselves. So PI opened up, and fantastic facility. It's beautiful. All the, the best stuff and all the new gadgets and fantastic coaches and fantastic staff and services. For a long time, we joked at Extreme Couture, once they opened up and everybody went over there, we joked like, oh, they can have the UFC PI. We'll be the Bellator PI. We'll be the B squad. That's fine. I used to make the joke. I was like, I don't know why everyone's lifting over the PI. Our 45-pound plates weigh the same as their 45-pound plates. It's not a big deal. And guys started going over there, but then all of a sudden it becomes too crowded over there. And then you're training alongside people that you're probably going to be fighting in your next couple fights, if not your next fight, So then us being so close and us being such a large facility, our coaches would go down there and our fighters would go down there. It's like, hey man, if you don't like it here and you just need a little bit more room, come down to the gym, come down at this time. You and your coaches, you can use the facility. So now it's kind of balanced out where you still get a lot of guys that go to the PI because it's there and it's accessible, but a lot of guys who have a great relationship with Eric and all the other coaches at our gym, they know that if they just hit Eric up, like, hey man, I want to come through at this time with my people. Is it cool? Eric will open the door wide open for them, and guys can come in and get a little privacy and away from the craziness, and maybe even just the feel of the gym. We're a big warehouse facility, and the feel of our gym is different than the big, bright, shiny UFC PI. So some people like that better for their training. It just seems like it's a little bit more gritty and tough, and there's a mental aspect to it too, I think. But I think Eric being able to build so many great relationships in the sport makes it so that a lot of these guys will pop in, because we've had almost every single UFC champion come through our doors at one point or another. So
pretty much, or at least close to. Dude, you guys have been around. I first started training. So I started with boxing, but I first started getting involved with MMA and jiu-jitsu and all those things probably back in around 2005 or 2006. And back then, dude, Extreme Couture was like the main gym you heard of outside of, Jackson's or an American Top Team or something of, something like those. Cause it's like, you guys have been around for so long, but like you said, with that turnaround, now you guys are not only, cranking out champions in multiple organizations, but like we'll talk about in a little bit, with you doing the strength and conditioning stuff, like hell, the day I was there, Mox was in there training. So, you guys are bringing in both the best in MMA and outside, at least from what I can see when I was there. So, if you're in Vegas, there's not really a lot better of a place to be training than Extreme Couture.
I agree. We're one of the best gyms in Vegas, man. I'll put us up against anybody else any day of the week.
I know you.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about MMA and stuff. I got another question for you. So I know that you did Bloodsport, which anybody that knows us, if you guys are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and check out all the past episodes, like with the Savage Gentleman Victor Benjamin, who was on that card, the American Kaiju Lindsay Snow. All those great interviews are there. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. But that brings me to this question. You know, I was doing a little bit of my research into your fights with MMA, and that you had gotten to fight in World Series of Fighting and stuff like that. So, like, when you first started trying your hand at any of the wrestling stuff, and even now, you know, are you still trying to fight very often, or go back and forth between fighting and wrestling, or where are you at?
No, I actually announced my retirement from active MMA competition after my last fight, which was in June.
I was going to say, I saw it was just earlier this year.
Yeah, so I fought Spike Carlisle, was a UFC vet, 4-fight UFC vet, I think he was. Good dude, solid opponent. I hadn't fought in about 2.5 years. My 2 previous fights I had lost by TKO and KO. I took some time off just to kind of let my brain recover. I was dealing with post-concussion symptoms for a couple months after that second knockout, so I just wanted to take some time. My kids were only a few months old. I just wanted to just kind of see, like, okay, let's heal, let's recover, and then let's see where we want to go from here. And I, you know, worked during that whole time. I built my business up as a strength coach, got a lot of clients and doing my whole thing with that. I still wanted to fight. I was getting into my mid-30s, so I knew I only had so much time to do something big. And then an opportunity came along, and they said, hey, do you want to fight for this Oscar De La Hoya promotion and fight against Spike Carlisle? And I knew who Spike was. And to me, it was just a test. Like, okay, former UFC fighter, never fought a guy who had been in the UFC before. I fought guys who then went to the UFC, but I never fought somebody who had already been there and was trying to work his way back. I was like, okay, solid contest. I can go against this guy. I'll have a great measuring stick of where I'm at right now. And I kind of, like, in my own head, I was on kind of like a vision quest. I was like, all right, this is how I'm going to find my place in all this. I got to fight this guy, and then I'm going to get all the answers to all the questions that I have, and probably answers to questions I don't even know yet, you know? So fought him, and didn't go my way, unfortunately. And then I kind of already thought leading up to the fight, okay, if I lost this one, where do we go from here? And physically and mentally and emotionally, I was still willing to keep going. Problem was that leading up to this fight, I had to cut my schedule in half as far as work goes, teaching clients, teaching classes, and that's how I make my money. That's how I provide for my family. So the 6 weeks leading up to the fight, after the fight was all said and done, no, I wasn't broke, but after the fight was all said and done, I was negative. Like, I was in the hole from the fight.
Yeah.
Even if I had won that fight, I still would have come up short. So I had already had the wheels turning in my head. It's like, okay, physically still capable, emotionally, like, I still want this, but my wife and my kids are seriously the most important thing to me. It's why I do everything that I do. And now it started becoming crystal clear that continuing to actively pursue competition would have been detrimental to everything else that was positive in my life. I would have to sacrifice not only more time, more money, more energy, my body, my brain, but now I'm taking away from my family. I'm taking food off the table. I'm taking away the ability to pay the bills. I'm taking away my wife's freedom to pursue her interests with her art business, which I totally support 100%. And I want her to keep doing it. I don't want her to have to go back to a regular job to be able to do that stuff. So just the more I thought about it, and once the fight was over, I was like, you know what? Let me just call it, because we could always go back, right? Something comes along and some opportunity comes up that just makes sense. We could always jump back in. But just in my head, in that moment, I was like, you know what? Let's just clean break. Let's just be done with it. I left my gloves in the center of the ring. I wrote a big old post about it, and I just decided to leave it, man. I still have kind of those feelings of doubt, like, maybe I should do one more. Maybe I should. But as long as the thesis of why I retired is still the same, which was, can I still be able to provide for my family the way that I do now and still be able to pursue my interests as a fighter? And if the answer is no, then pretty obvious what I need to continue to keep doing, which is pursue my career as a strength coach. But the other side of your question now, earlier this year, I got my first opportunity to do Bloodsport. And I got that from Moxley. Moxley hit up Josh Barnett, and he's like, hey, man, like, my coach knows pro wrestling, and he's an athlete, and he can do all this stuff. Like, you got anybody for him? Josh got back to him right away and set me up with my first match at Bloodsport. And then we ended up doing the Future Stars of Wrestling show out here. They did Natural Born Killers. Tom Lawler hosted that one. I got to go against one of my training partners, which was a lot of fun. And it was great because I love pro wrestling. I love the entertainment aspect of it. I love it as an art form. Being able to shoot the shit with Moxley about stuff all the time is great. And then now being able to get in there and like do stuff is really cool. But the best part about it is I don't have to sacrifice for pro wrestling the way that I sacrifice for MMA. So if a match comes along, hey, we need you to wrestle this weekend. Cool, sign me up. Like, I'm ready to go. Let me clear a couple of things off my schedule and we'll get this going.
Well, that brings up a great question in and of itself. So, you lead me right into it. See, you're just making my job easy. See, these are when these shows go easy. But speaking about the pro wrestling thing, so I got a question for you when it comes to Corey. So Corey, out of the two of us, is he's more MMA centric, so not the biggest wrestling guy. Now, I took him to his first two big shows that he's ever been to. We went to GCW War Games, and then I took him to All Out as his first like 2-show combo. So you got a hell of an introduction. My question for you is, when it comes to, wrestling and MMA, what was it for you that made wrestling so appealing? Because I try to explain it to Corey from being like a straight MMA side of the things, like me being somebody that's fought, why this stuff is still appealing to me, why knowing that they know who's going to win, why it doesn't bother me. What is it for you that attracts you to wrestling?
Well, first thing is I've always been a fan. I grew up watching pro wrestling. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. I grew up through the whole Attitude Era and all that stuff and the Monday Night Wars. And, I got to watch pro wrestling when it was in its prime. So I've always been a fan. I was a pro wrestling fan before I was an MMA fan. I didn't get an MMA until about 2001. And MMA was appealing because I, trained martial arts, and being able to see real martial arts in real action was, of course, very appealing and very great. And the fights are amazing and the athletes are incredible. But like, I don't know if it's maybe just me and the way my brain works. But I know a few guys I've talked to about this think the same way too. Like there's way more parallels between MMA and pro wrestling than I think MMA fighters and pro wrestlers want to admit. Yeah. They like everyone says, no, man, MMA is completely different from pro wrestling. Is it though? Is it? I mean, we get two guys in the middle of the ring. We're trying to entertain people, so they want to spend their hard-earned money to sit in the seats and cheer us on, whoever's going to win, right? Yeah, the outcomes in pro wrestling matches might be predetermined, but we still want to see good action in the ring. We still want to see a story being told. MMA is the same way. If it was just about two guys getting in the ring, we wouldn't give a damn about these guys and their backgrounds and where they came from and what they're fighting for and who their families and their coach. We wouldn't care about any of that. But we do all these, UFC does all their primetime specials all the time where we got to learn everything about these guys. I came from the mean streets of such and such, and I've been dealing with this my whole life. I quit my job to be able to pursue this, my story, blah, blah, blah. Because we invest in these people and we start to be a part of their stories, and we want to see people succeed or fail based on who we think they are as a person. I don't see how that's any different from pro wrestling to MMA and vice versa. Not only that, especially in the last couple of years in MMA, starting with Chael Sonnen and then going to Conor McGregor, and then everyone else
trained at the WCW power plant.
Starting with Chael Sonnen, though, Chael went completely outfield with that and started cutting pro wrestling promos in the middle of the ring. And some people thought it was absolutely ridiculous, and they wanted to see him get his ass handed to him for it. Like, dude, this guy's trying to be, all the old school wrestlers. He's bit this guy's promo word for word. Like, I want to see him get his ass kicked. But Chael Sonnen understood the way that pro wrestlers understand. He doesn't care if you like him or hate him. You're still paying to watch him. Facts. You're still buying that pay-per-view. You're still sitting in that stadium. You're still watching the fight. It does not matter. Exactly. And he was one of the first guys to make that connection. Like, it doesn't matter why they're watching. They're watching. That's the important part. Conor McGregor took it to a whole nother level, the way that probably only Conor McGregor could, and then everyone else tried to beat Conor McGregor. But once you start to see those parallels, man, you start to understand that there can be things learned from both sides of the equation. Depending on what side you're already standing on, you can learn something from the other side of that playing field. The MMA guys can definitely learn how to sell a fight from the pro wrestlers. Chael showed that completely. And then a lot of the pro wrestlers are starting to understand that they can take from the MMA guys and start learning their techniques and some of the stuff they do and incorporate it into their wrestling matches. How many times have you watched WWE, who loves to copy everything that everybody else does, by the way? How many times have you seen them the weekend after a big fight try to copy whatever happened in that fight? You'll
Well, I mean, look at they keep bringing the Paul brothers on TV.
Dude, I'm saying, like, they want to try to bring whatever's happening in the world. They want to try to bring that into WWE. If someone scores the flashiest knockout you've ever seen in a UFC fight, bet money within the next week you're going to see them try to mimic that on Monday Night Raw or on SmackDown.
No arguments here, dude. I mean, and so that brings up another good question. This is something that I think Corey is definitely starting to see the other side of, going to war games and shit like that. But for you, you know, coming from the world of MMA, man, like, can you talk a little bit about, you know, what were some of the biggest surprises to you as it pertains to, like, the beating you take in wrestling? Because I asked that because I told Corey the same thing like you said. Yes, the outcomes might be predetermined, but dude, these dudes get the shit beat out of them. And now that I've taken him to GCW and he watched Bloodsport, because we've got you as well, but we had Nolan Edwards, a past guest of the show, was on there. Tom Lawler's a past guest of the show that's been on there. You had Victor Benjamin, who was just on here a couple weeks ago, that was on there. So I told him, I was like, dude, these guys are still getting the fuck beat out of them. So for you, what was some of the things that were hard, if any, to get used to, or like the beating difference from MMA to wrestling?
So I've only had 2 pro wrestling matches. I'm still just kind of learning how to do this stuff. So all I know is fighting. All I know is MMA. So my first match with Bloodsport, I'm in the ring. I'm in this studio and going over some stuff with Mox, and then Josh Barnett walks up, and I get to ask this dude questions, and I get to, okay, like, how do I do this? What do I do here? And I'm just absorbing. And one of the things that Josh told me that really stood out was, like, it's always better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission when it comes to your striking. You want to make sure that you're actually landing your strikes. You want to make sure that it's, you know, you want to make sure people can feel it. And so I let the guy that I was going against just actually hit me, because that's all I know. Like, I just hit me, just fucking kick me, dude. And it was a more of a grappling heavy match, so I didn't have to worry about it too much. But then I did my last match with Future Stars of Wrestling when we did Natural Born Killers, and I'm going against a buddy of mine, a guy that I train with all the time. And I told him the same thing that Barnett told me. And we had this one spot in our match where it was like the movie Bloodsport, where the two guys are like trading kicks back and forth.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't care what kind of noises I make, dude. I need you to hit me, because it's a small venue. It's a small crowd. Like, we can't bullshit these guys. I need you to hit me. And so the first kick, like, I sell, like, first kick, boom, guy gets me, and I drop, like, off my feet and just fall as hard as I can. And then we traded, I would say, probably about 20 kicks back and forth with each other. I was totally fine in the middle of the match. Match ends, we go backstage, the adrenaline starts to die down about 10 minutes later, and I can barely breathe because my ribs are just so beat up, man. My ribs were killing me for about 3 weeks after that. I don't know if I don't think I broke anything, but I definitely bruised something. I might have tore a little cartilage in there or something, but
displaced a rib.
It's maybe, I don't know. And I've done that before, so maybe I just re-injured it, re-aggravated. But that's like the hardest thing that I'm trying to figure out now is I know that I have the skills to be able to make this stuff look a certain way, but now it's learning how to do that and still be able to protect not only the person I'm going with, but also how to protect myself. Because right now I'm like, no, just fuck it. Just go ahead and hit me. It's fine. I can take it. I'll deal with it later.
I know how to make this look great. Just hit me dead square.
Just hit me as hard as you can.
Something tells me that might not be the best way to go forever.
It's looked pretty good so far, but I mean, I don't know how much longer I want to keep doing it that way.
Hey, all right. Well, that brings to a good point. You know, you brought up Mox. So tell me a little bit about that. How the hell did that come to be with you guys starting to train and all that stuff? And with you being somebody who's a fan of wrestling, I mean, what were your thoughts when the whole thing came about?
Oh, dude, this is a story. I know I'm talking a lot, guys. I know. Yeah, I know. It's
please do, man.
but just like
you're good.
I don't get to talk about this kind of stuff very often with people, so but I appreciate you guys having me.
No, dude, you're welcome back anytime you want.
So meeting Mox was total chance, random, lucky, once in a million chance. That's all it was. He comes into my gym right after he had moved to Vegas, and happened to be in there like right as I was getting to leave. And I saw him walk in, and Eric was giving him a tour. He was looking for a place to train where he wasn't going to get mobbed by everybody. And at our gym, you know, people will say hi and they'll want to take pictures and stuff, but they're not going to mob you like they would.
No.
Oh, no. Like a Gold's Gym or 24 Hour Fitness or something. So, oh, we good? Cool.
Yep, you're good.
So
yep, you're good.
He was just looking for a place where he wasn't. Okay. So he was just looking for a place where he wasn't going to get mobbed. So I'm in there and I recognized him immediately. I was like, oh shit, that's Dean Ambrose. And so I walk up real quick. I was like, hey man, excuse me. I don't mean to be rude. My name's Gil. I'm the strength and conditioning coach here. I know Eric's taking care of you, but if there's ever anything else you need, please let me know. And Eric vouched for me. He's like, oh, Gil's the man. He runs the weight room over here. Like, just let him know if you have any questions. That was it. And then he was at the gym for a few months training. He would take classes when he wasn't on the road. He would lift weights, and we would shoot the shit, and that was it. And I was, hey, John, what's up, man? How you doing? And we talk a little bit, and then he won his first WWE championship, and then he disappeared. He's on the road because he's the face of the company, right? And then I didn't see him or hear from him for 2-3 years after that. And then one day at random, I get a message on Instagram, and it's Renee Young. And Renee Young, and when I saw the name, I thought it was a joke. I was like, Renee Young wants to send you a message. Yeah, sure she does. And then I say the blue check mark by her name, and I'm like, okay, it's Renee Young. And it's like, hey, how you doing? My husband John's been looking for you. He wants to get a hold of you about some training. Here's his phone number. Please give him a call when you get a chance. Yep, sure, Renee, no problem. And I was nervous as hell, but I copied the number. I sent a text. I was like, how you doing, John? This is Gil from Extreme Couture. Heard you're looking for me. Let me know what I could do for you. Give me a call back. And like 5 seconds later, this dude texts me back. Hey, dude, I've been looking for you. Here's what's happening. I'm leaving WWE. I need to get in the best shape of my life. Totally want to rebuild myself. You're the guy to do it. When can we get started? And I was supposed to go on vacation like 2 days later. And I called my wife. I was like, how mad would you be if I canceled our vacation right now? Or at least just pushed it back a week or two? And she's like, this better be good. Why are you canceling? And then I told her the story, and she was like, yeah, you can go ahead and cancel. So I booked him for the following Monday. Yeah. So I don't blame you, bro. And
all right. So
and then that was it. Like I trained him for his AEW debut, and I've been with him since. So yeah.
So funny story with that. So I can relate in a degree. So when we went to StarCast in 2019, that was like the first big event we got to work. And so I went in there, and our buddies from Breaking Down the Ring, which if you guys are wrestling fans, check out the homies. But we went out to Chicago, went to go check out All Out, blah, 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 you know, went there, and we had gotten media passes, the whole deal, whatever. So we're doing the scrums and stuff, which, okay, that's cool. That was pretty dope to get to be in there. And then so my buddy's got his own booth. Well, DDP sits down next to us and looks at the signs, looks up, looks down, looks up, looks down, and he goes, so you guys are a podcast. So you gonna interview me, bro? And I'm like, well, shit, I'm not gonna say no. So which you can check that interview out. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like literally, dude. I gave my buddy, our buddies from Breaking Down the Ring, I was like, look, I'll film yours if you film mine, bro, because I'm not saying no. And it was dope. We went down like this whole run and his thoughts on Cody starting AEW and, you know, what his thoughts were going into the match at All Out and all that stuff. But like you said with Mox, the reason I bring that up is because sometimes shit just, it's like weird. it's weird how that'll happen. You'll just be there, and then shit, Tom Lawler, same thing, dude. I mean, we were at Warrior Wrestling in Chicago, and shout out to everybody at Warrior. They couldn't have been cooler. Just let us go through and interview Gage and everybody else. And it was just because we were there. But, you know, sometimes it's like that happenstance. So now that we've talked a little bit about, you know, you getting to know Mox and training with him and all that stuff, once you guys got training, was there any, like, him saying he wanted to get in better shape? Is there any, like, are you guys ramping up training any harder when you're going into, like, say, a pay-per-view, or like with him coming up into a match like he's got coming up now against Nick Gage? I mean, do you guys change your training up at all, or is it kind of just like different dependent upon the day?
Right now, what we do is we change it up depending on the day, because he's out of town at least once a week, and I never know what kind of shape he's going to come back in. Because of the way he wrestles. We've all seen it. When we first started getting him ready, though, I had 2 months straight to get him ready for his AEW debut, and to also get him ready for the G1 in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So
Yes,
we did a full-on 10-week like MMA style training camp where he got in phenomenal shape. The first thing that we had to do with him, and I've talked about this in AEW countdowns and stuff, first thing we had to do with him is just rebuild him. We had to make sure that the dude can move, because he was just so banged up when we first started training together. And once he was able to move better and his work capacity started to improve, then we started lifting heavier weights and doing more explosive type of training. We started doing kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, and, you know, we started ramping up pretty crazy. So that first whole 2 months, we got to do like a periodized sports-specific training camp. After that, there's been a couple times where there's certain matches that we definitely want to dial him up for. The rest of it is just focused on keeping him healthy. I just want to make sure he could do this week in and week out without completely destroying himself, which he tends to try to do almost on purpose. But, you know,
You're not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it depends. Like, most of the time we're just really just, okay, how are we feeling week to week? And then the rest of the time we'll try to pick some spots where maybe we can gear everything towards one particular match.
Well, that brings up go ahead, Corey.
I was just going to say, as somebody who, I guess, specializes in MMA training and strength and conditioning in particular, what is the biggest variation from going from an MMA fighter to somebody competing in wrestling, other than, like you said, just trying to, I guess, keep them more loose and not so much worry about building, more so maintaining, I guess you could say, right?
I mean, in that aspect, it's not too much different, because with MMA fighters too, especially if I get someone who's in a fight camp, I never know what kind of shape they're going to come in on a day-to-day basis. It just depends on what they've done that week, how far they are into camp, how was sparring the day before. You know, all that stuff is going to play a factor. So there's a lot of times with the MMA fighters, yeah, we gotta be able to change it on a dime. I got to call an audible some days and take out certain exercises, change the intensity of certain things, or just scrap the entire program for that day. And they're like, okay, you can't do any of this. We're going to do something completely different. So in that regard, it's not too much different. As far as like strength qualities, power qualities, not too much different. We still need these guys to be strong in multiple ranges of motion, in multiple directions. We need them to be powerful. We need them to be explosive. Conditioning requirements are probably different. MMA, of course, being a little bit more higher intensity over shorter periods of time, 5-minute rounds. Pro wrestling matches can be anywhere from a few seconds all the way up to 60-minute Ironman matches, you know? So endurance requirements are different depending on who we're going with. Other than that, I mean, I would say probably 80-85% of the training is probably the same. And it's just little things that depend on how the person's feeling that day and then what kind of match are we getting them ready for.
Well, so here's my question. So you got a guy like Mox, who you'll see him on TV every week with AEW, but I mean, the cool thing, since he's gotten to go to AEW, I mean, he's been everywhere else. I mean, hell, when we were in Chicago, he showed up to challenge Gage while we were down there, in Chicago. So that brings the question, now that you've dabbled your foot in the pro wrestling game, what are your thoughts on death matches? And do we ever see you dabble with it, since you've been messing with GCW?
You know what? Nick Mondo asked me that same question. We were filming the last documentary for this upcoming match. He's like, "Hey, man, would you ever want to get in there with Nick Gage?" I'm like, "Don't talk to me for the rest of the day, Mondo." I don't. Not my thing. Never say no. Never say never. Right set of circumstances. Who knows? Not at the top of my priorities list. Not something I'm actively
I would
pursuing.
imagine so.
You never know. You might catch me on the right day where I just feel like doing something crazy, and we'll see what happens. But no, it's not high on my priorities list right now. The only matches I've done so far are more work shoot style matches.
Yeah.
More pancrase style stuff. I would actually like to do just a regular standard like pro wrestling match. Make that happen first and kind of see what that feels like, and if I can pull that off, and then go from there. We'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, you talk about the MMA end of things. I mean, hell, with the people Mox is picking fights with these days. I mean, I was kind of schooling Corey on Suzuki and the fact that he was one of the first kings of pancrase and shit. I was like, dude, I'm telling you, like, just because these dudes are wrestlers, like, don't sleep on it, dude.
Yeah, man, especially in Japan. Like, there's a huge crossover in Japan. Like, MMA guys over there, the guys who fought in Pride always used to wrestle in New Japan all the time, and the Japanese fans would watch both and they would love both. It's part of the culture, and I always thought that was great.
Del Rio even fought in Pride style fights in a fucking mask, dude.
Those
like,
Carlos
people don't
Jr.
realize
guys head kicked off. That's right.
Yes.
I remember
See,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I try to do my homework here, but I remember that shit. And like, it's ironic because now Thunder Rosa's fighting, at least as far as I know, in his promotion. So
yeah,
it's a funny thing. So for you, like these days, man, with all the different wrestling that we got, like what kind of stuff are you watching? Like what stuff do you enjoy? I mean, obviously you're not just watching mock stuff, but do you like everything, or is there a certain style that sticks out to you? Do you like Japan more?
There's only so much time that I have to watch TV in general. I would say the majority of that time is probably spent watching MMA and pro wrestling, more MMA than pro wrestling, just because of all the guys that we have in the gym. I record AEW Wednesday and Friday nights, and I will always fast forward through the commercials. I
do that too. I can't stand picture in picture.
I don't skip a whole lot of the broadcast in AEW. There's a couple things where I might just like kind of gloss over it, where if it's just like a filler match and it doesn't really mean anything, I might just say, let's skip past this. I just want to get in the meat and potatoes of what's going on in AEW, and especially with Moxley, I want to know what's going on with him so we can kind of prepare. And then if they ever come with camera crews and want to ask me questions, I need to know what's going on, So I'll record Monday Night Raw, which I tend to fast forward about 90% of Monday Night Raw because for the last couple of years it's been completely unwatchable.
Fuck, you're not
Every
kidding.
guest we have on the show.
Yeah, and I'll record SmackDown, and same thing. Like SmackDown's more interesting to me than Monday Night Raw is. I feel like they're doing better stuff over there, but even then, like
hands down,
60% of the stuff I tend to fast forward through SmackDown as well. But I still want to see what's going on. I'll watch the promos. I'll watch all the WWE pay-per-views. I'll watch the AEW pay-per-views. Usually the video packages will tell me what I need to know in case I missed anything. But I need to have a general idea of what's going on and what direction the sport's taking. Now, AEW and WWE are doing completely different things for the most part, but I still want to know what each person's doing just to kind of get a general lay of the land and where the direction of the sport is going and what kind of stories they're trying to tell and all that. I watch UFC all the time. I'll catch New Japan if there's something interesting that I want to see. I'll watch Japanese MMA if I can stay up that late. But it just depends. Most of the time I record and I'll watch later. If just I miss something, I'll just go back and find the video and watch it later. I just don't really have the time in my schedule to watch everything live. I don't have the time in my schedule to watch anything live.
Dude, I end up watching so much stuff on the
between work and the kids. I'm the same way. It's hard to make time for anything else in between there. And now I picked myself up a motorcycle, so I'm trying to fit hours on the bike as well, and that takes up even more time. So
nice, man.
Funny how that works, But one organization that I feel as though doesn't get enough love, and I had actually noticed on your hat, PFL. Any athletes competing in the grand finale of this year's season coming up here in, another month?
Yeah. So we have two. that train at our gym. Bruno, who's fighting for the heavyweight title, trains at our gym. Great guy. And then my sister-in-law, Taylor Gardado, is fighting Kayla Harrison for the women's lightweight championship.
So how the hell are you feeling about that matchup, dude? Because we've been seeing Kayla, showing up on AEW and all this stuff too. I mean, she's that's going to be a tough ass fight, dude. And I mean, regardless of what happens in this fight, I feel like it's only going to be a few more fights in PFL before we see her try to go jump over to the UFC.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to her later, but she can go ahead and figure that out after Taylor beats her. We're not.
That's what I'm talking about. You heard it here first.
We're not. We're not overlooking Kayla. Like, Kayla's dangerous. Kayla's Kayla. Taylor came into this tournament as a dark horse, man. She was officially 0-1 coming into the tournament. She had fought her pro debut at a 1-night 3-fight tournament. The first 2 fights were exhibitions, and she ended up losing in the final. So officially, she was 0-1 coming into this tournament. Came in as a total dark horse. Made it to the playoffs, made it to the finals, and now she gets to fight the number 1 woman in the world, and everybody is counting her out. Understandable, but if they knew Taylor, and they knew the drive, and they knew the passion, and they knew the reasons why she does what she does, and they saw how hard she works day in and day out, she's been expecting to fight Kayla Harrison since this tournament was announced. It wasn't, let me try to win this fight and get to the next one. Let me try to get to the finals. Day 1, she's like, I'm going to win this tournament. I'm going to be the champion. I'm going to win $1 million. And I'm going to start it by walking across that ring, opening up the palm of my hand, and slapping Kayla Harrison across the face. Like, she's been ready for this since the tournament was announced. Now she's here and she's working her ass off. I fortunately get to be a part of this training camp, not only because she's my sister-in-law and I get to see her in and out of the gym all the time, but I'm actually doing her strength and conditioning for this fight. I've done her strength and conditioning for the whole tournament. To the point where now, like, she just did a face-off with Kayla Harrison at the press conference earlier this week, and Taylor comes up to me after. She's like, hey, like, she didn't seem all that big and strong to me when I was, like, facing off there. Like, not like the last couple times I stood in front of her. She's like, whatever we're doing, it's working. Like, let's keep it going. I want to be ready. I'm like, bet, let's go.
That's got to be awesome to be training an athlete and hear the actual motivation that you're giving them, I guess you could say.
Yeah, man. It's I love my job. My job is amazing. I get to work with so many cool people from all different walks of life. I mean, yeah, I get to work with guys like Moxley, and I get to work with Taylor, and I get to train musicians. I've trained other MMA fighters and legends. I get to train all sorts of, but I train your average everyday gym goer, people who just want to move better, look better, feel better, be stronger, all that kind of stuff. And I try to treat every person the same. I try to treat all their goals as equally important, because to them they are. And going back to how my man Eric Nixick is, it's not about me when I train them. I need to make sure that they're getting what they're paying for, and being able to hear people say like, hey, what you're doing is making a difference with what I'm doing. Very satisfying, man. Very, very gratifying.
Well, good on you bringing up the PFL stuff, Corey. Now, I'm going to just throw this out here, shameless plug. Taylor, or any of you guys who hear this, if you guys ever want to come on Knockouts and 3 Counts, we are more than happy to have you. But I'm just throwing that out there. But, yeah, so talking –
Before we jump off PFL, I'm myself am a huge fan. I've watched every single event that they've put on since they've been rebranded and came under the ESPN banner. And they've done really good work. That's why I feel as though they don't get talked enough about in the MMA space. So
I feel like PFL is doing a lot like what AEW is doing, right? Like lately, AEW's been making a lot more direct references to direct competition with WWE, especially on Friday nights, which I'm not a fan of. I think they should just focus on doing their own thing, because when you focus on doing your own thing, you're just going to put out the best product you could put out because you want to put it out that way, not because of someone else is doing. I think PFL is the same way. You got your tournament format. You get to tell stories about these guys. It's a merit-based system on how these guys advance. You earn points for how you finish, when you finish. You get to advance and get seeded depending on your wins, your losses, how fast you won and lost. I think it's one of the most fair MMA organizations, if not the most fair MMA organization out there, as far as opportunities that it creates for people. You want this opportunity to fight for a championship? Here's exactly how you can earn it. even if you're coming in with absolutely no professional wins under your belt, just like Taylor did.
Yeah, like I said, I love what they're doing in the MMA sphere. I feel like the whole season platform, even though they bring it up tenfold, it really is a standing something that makes them stand out against the competition, I guess you could say.
100%. Absolutely. They're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Well, before we let you get out of here, I mean, since we know you're, such a fan of MMA and wrestling like us, I guess this is a two-pronged question. So, if you can pick any of them, it can be any match you want, any fight you want, any favorite MMA fight, favorite pro wrestling match.
Ooh, favorite MMA fight. Man, so many good ones to choose from, right? One of the ones that stands out in my head was the fight between Randy Couture and Tito Ortiz, because that fight was a catalyst for me moving to Vegas and pursuing my career as a fighter at Randy's gym. Randy hadn't opened up Extreme Couture yet. It was 2003 when that fight took place. But long story short, that was the last thing that my dad and I ever got to do together, was watch that fight. And on the undercard, Nick Diaz fought Jeremy Jackson. And my dad made a comment of, hey, these guys are about your size, aren't they? We're like, oh, yeah, they're inch or two taller, but and a couple pounds heavier. But, yeah, about the same size. You ever think you could do what they do? And if I knew how to wrestle, but I was like, even a little training, this and that, maybe. And then my dad had this thing where he would hear you say something that you think you can do, and he would just look at you and be like, and then say nothing else about it. And he did that. I said what I said, and he looked at me. He was like, That was it. And it stuck in my head. And we watched the rest of the event, and that was the last thing my dad and I ever got to do together. He passed away shortly after that. And that stuck in my head, man. And it stuck in my head, and it stuck in my head. So I started training, and then I started fighting, and then I saw Randy open up the gym. I was like, well, that's where I need to be. So fast forward 2008, there I go, and here I am. So that fight holds special significance. I don't know, not the best MMA fight in history per se, but
most significant for you?
When I think about my favorite fights, yeah, that one stands out.
For a great reason, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
What about on the wrestling end, boss? Is it are you go ahead, Corey? I didn't
finish the two-part question.
So on the other end of it, what is there a early match that got you into it? You got a favorite match from any time period? Doesn't matter, time period.
Favorite match from my childhood was the first match between Kane and The Undertaker, WrestleMania 14. April 1st, 1997. I remember that because The Undertaker was my favorite as a kid. And that story that led up to that match was one of the best stories I'd ever seen as a child. That was the first time I was ever hooked into what pro wrestling was doing, because they told this story over months. And when they finally stepped in the ring against each other, 13-year-old me was like, holy shit, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. That was the first wrestling pay-per-view I ever ordered at my house with my money. I got to invite all my friends over, at pizza and soda, and it was fucking cool. Yeah, that one, man, that was one of my favorite matches as a kid, just because the story that they told, and just it was kind of that turning point where pro wrestling is a thing that I can really sink into at that point. I had just watched it up until that point. But that was the first time I was like, oh man, this is really cool.
Well, as much as that would be a perfect segment to end the show on, I do have two quick questions I do want to throw your way. First off, when you have an absolute monster like Ngannou in the gym with you guys, and you are the strength and conditioning coach, what is that like?
I actually don't get to work with Francis Ngannou.
Oh, okay.
I talk to Francis all the time, and I've got a good relationship with him. But he's got his own people, and he's doing his own thing. He mostly works with Eric, and then he's got a couple coaches that come in and out. He does stuff at the UFCPI. I'd love the chance to work with him. It's just the opportunity's never been presented to me. And I tell Eric all the time, hey, anything you guys need, just let me know. And whatever Francis is doing right now is working. I don't want to step on that at all, but I'm always at their disposal if they ever need me.
Can I just say that guy's fucking fist is bigger than my head, and I got a big ass fucking head.
He is
I met him here in Detroit when he
big.
fought in Detroit. And holy fuck, stand next to me and he's putting his fist up and I'm like, I look at the picture afterwards. I'm like, I've got a big ass head. All right. And his fist is bigger than my fucking dome. So the idea of letting that guy hit me at all is just, I don't know. It's not very fucking enthusing to me.
Every time I think of the size of Ngannou, I just think back of that. Shout out Dan Ige, huge Dan Ige fan, but I think back of that video when he was just drilling body shots into Ngannou and he's just standing there. He's just standing there.
Man. They've done videos like that quite a bit where guys like try to body shot Francis and they just can't phase him, man. We have another video where one of our 125 pounders was holding a kick shield for Francis and Francis threw a leg kick at him and took this dude completely off his feet. And they have fun with it, man. But dude, that guy is scary big.
Yeah, he's an absolute monster. I can't wait to see him back in the cage. I hope everything works out well between him and the UFC because that's somebody that I'm a huge fan of. But
they'll get it
final question on my end, because we had brought up Eric Nixick so much. What other coaches do you feel like need to have their names represented before we let you go from the Extreme Couture banner?
I think Dennis Davis doesn't get enough credit. I think Dennis Davis, who's been at Extreme Couture since day one, was a part of the original fight team and has been head coach there this entire time after Randy retired. Like, Dennis has been the man at Extreme Couture and is still churning out athletes and contenders all the time. And I just don't think he gets enough credit for the work he does. Dennis was Eric's head coach for years. A large majority of what Eric learned, he learned.
Oh no, we lost him.
No,
right at the end. Damn internet. Oh, there he is. No, he's
I'm not
back.
sure what happened there. Yeah, I don't know what happened. But yeah, I think Dennis is one of the guys who definitely deserves all the credit in the world. We have another guy at our gym, I think, who doesn't get talked about enough. He hasn't been there quite as long as everybody else, but Eddie Baracco is a phenomenal coach. Eddie is so good at what he does, so passionate, cares about his fighters in and out of the cage, man. Eddie's a great, great dude. Those two guys specifically, I don't think they get enough credit. Eric gets a lot of the credit, and it's all completely well-deserved. But you got to give it where it's due, man. I think Dennis and Eddie need to get a little more time in the spotlight because they've earned it.
Well, that's why I wanted to pose the question to you, somebody who's actually, behind closed doors and gets to see all the work that's actually put in. So
yeah, on any given day, the guys running the show, Eric, Dennis, Eddie, like on any given day, those three guys are steering the ship.
Yeah, and it's pretty common too, where you see a lot of coaches that don't necessarily want that spotlight pointed at themselves. So it's always nice to hear from, like I say, another coach's perspective of who's doing good work out there.
It might have to do with, the same way that Eric is, where they understand it's not about them. And, they probably could be a little bit more vocal about just how good they really are, but they're so busy worrying about, are their fighters getting the work that they need and getting the attention that they need to get ready for their fights? I think that they forget to advertise themselves as much as they should, or as much as they could. But, if we're just going to let hard work speak for itself, man, I definitely think those guys should be getting some attention.
Well, before I give you my last question, all of you guys who have been in the comments, we've had a couple in here that have been in here commenting about you the whole way through. Char C saying that she's talking about Raw and talking about you and Mox training together. Same with Sophia. I see you in the comments. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, man. So, I get a lot of Mox's fans that have followed me on social media since I started with this, and the names that you threw out there are some of the more consistent ones, man. The vast majority of the fans of Moxley who have followed me since we started have been unreal, dude. They're so cool. They treat me like a rock star, even though I'm just doing my job, man. And I appreciate them. They're awesome. I'm glad that they're watching this, and I'm glad that they're giving some positive feedback. It's great, man.
Greatly appreciate both of you guys. You guys are new here. If you're fans of wrestling, which clearly you're fans of Mox, we've got plenty of good stuff for you guys to check out. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and all that stuff. Like I said, Corey hit you with the good questions, so I'm going to make sure that I keep mine nice and lighthearted. So since you said most of what you end up watching these days ends up being wrestling and MMA, I mean, I know you guys had plenty of people on the card. You had Cynthia Cavillo, who was there when I was there on the card as well. I mean, what are your thoughts on what we saw from UFC 266, man?
Man, the main event was wild, obviously.
Facts.
Brian Ortega impressed me, man. I picked Volkanovski to win because I felt that Ortega wouldn't be able to deal with the pressure that he brought. That was the reason why that Ortega lost against Max Holloway. His volume and his output and his pressure was just so great that I think Ortega just didn't know what to do. And he still was getting outstruck in this fight, but he was still willing to engage. He was still willing to move forward. He was still willing to attack. He was diving on submissions as soon as they presented himself. One of them especially was very, very close to finishing that fight. I was impressed with his grit, man. I mean, say what you want to say. Like, people were kind of up in arms and clutching pearls about, oh my God, brain damage, CTE. Like, yes, we want to make sure that these guys are safe and they can continue to do this stuff and enjoy lives after fighting and all that. Like, I agree with that 100%. But there's a reason why we watch this stuff. Yep. There's a reason why these guys do what they do.
And it's a
there's a part of us that wants to see that, you know, like, every time the doctor was getting in there and checking on him to see if he was stopping the fight, Volkanovski was on the other side, like, let him go, let him fight. And I'm screaming at my TV, let these guys fight. Like, we want to see that kind of stuff. I want to see what these dudes are made of, man. He's willing to fight. Let him go. Let him do what he's going to do. He's a grown man. He can make his own decisions.
It would be one thing, right, if it was like the closing fight of the prelims or something, and you want to say end that fight early.
Yeah, sure. I mean, circumstances. Yeah,
but I mean, looking at circumstances and the circumstances being what they were in that fight, Brian Ortega having just fought his heart out, took years away from the game to improve his skills, showcased his skills in that zombie fight, to work his way back into a title fight. You can't sell a man short in his title.
No, not at all. Main event, world championship, everything, just like you said, man. Like, you have to take that into consideration. Guy's first fight in the UFC. Yeah, I mean, you want to err on the side of caution, especially if it's someone young. It's their first fight. Like, okay, hey, you're obviously not ready for this. Why don't you go back and, you know, put in some work and we'll give you another shot. World championship, main event, like, let these guys go. They signed up for. They know exactly what they signed up for. They're not going to sit there and get mad at you. I don't know any fighter who's going to sit there and get mad at their coaches for being like, why didn't you pull me out of that fight sooner? Yeah. No one's going to say that. No fighter I know would ever say something like that. Now, the coaches are going to be, man, I should have taken you out. And the coaches are going to feel guilty. But most fighters I know, no, you let me go. You let me fight. Like, you weren't keeping me in there because you wanted to see me get hurt. You keep me in there because you felt like I still had a shot. Now, if his coaches had thought that there was nothing that he was able to do in that fight and he was just going out there for the sake of being tough, then yes, that's on his coaches to understand, like, hey, look, we know that you're willing, but you're not doing anything in there. There's zero chance of you winning this fight. We're going to take you out. But because of the way he was fighting and because of the way he was looking for submissions the entire fight, his coaches felt like, hey, man, if you're just a little more active, if you just go out there and get that takedown right away, you can win this. If you just go out there and do what we know you can do. And I had absolutely no problem with the way that fight went down, man. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And to that point, it's arguable. But if I was a judge and I was scoring it, I felt like Ortega actually won that fifth round, to your point. So
I actually thought he won the third. Those two submission attempts were pretty close to finish.
Dude, I agree 100%.
And if we're going to go by criteria, the way that we should be judging the fights, right? Those were near finishes. So even though
that guillotine was about as close as you can get,
even though he got pretty beat up in that round, like, had Ortega been winning that third round and got those two near submission attempts, I would not be mad if they scored that at 10-8.
Did it at 10-8.
But because he got so beat up and then came back and almost finished the fight, I still scored it 10-9 for Ortega. But that's just me.
Yeah. So just to your point of it would have been a disgrace if we wouldn't have been able to see the performance that he was still able to put on in that fifth. Whether it was in a winning effort or not, you did get to see the heart and determination that he was willing to put in there to gain that belt. So
I'm an Ortega fan now, man. I wasn't a huge fan before that fight. I'm a fan now, man. I want to see that dude fight again.
Yeah.
Look, if there's one thing you can't not say about that guy after that fight, Brian Ortega is a fucking G. Period. Like, there's no way, there's no other way to put this. This dude's a savage. He don't give a fuck. Anyone that calls him soft clearly doesn't know what they're looking at. And it popped a good question into my head because it's something that Corey's finally getting to see on the other end of it. So like I mentioned at the early of the show, I took my first boxing fight at 13. Corey was at my last boxing fight when we were kids before I went full blown to jiu-jitsu and MMA. Tell, for anybody, who doesn't know, you getting to train with some of these people on such a high level, like I mentioned, Cynthia Cavill was there and she was on the card as well when we were training. For you getting to train and coach so many of these people, what is that like for you having to sit on the outside and then turn around and watch these people fight? Because for me, I mean, just in the friends of mine that have made it, like Justin James or Miles Jury or any of these guys that have come up out of here, or Crookshank when he went to the UFC, when they all went to the UFC, even if you're not the tightest guy, you're like, shit, man, I want to see my guy win. But for you, that's got to be a whole nother level. And then when, it doesn't go that way, when, it's a fucking fight. So for you, what is that side of the fight game like for you?
It just depends on the relationship you build with these people. So someone like Cynthia, I don't know Cynthia. We don't really interact. Hey, how you doing? But when it's people who train at your gym and it's people you build a relationship with, you want to see them succeed, and you're going to watch it just like you're watching your friends fight. I'll sit on the edge of my seat and get nervous and kind of duck and move. I'll hear Eric coaching in the corner and I'm getting hyped up. I'm like, yeah, put me in, coach. I'm ready. But then if it's someone that I trained, or if it's someone like Taylor who's family, oh man, I can't sit still. I'm sweating before the match, and I'm just like telling my wife, "Don't talk to me throughout this entire fight."
You bring up Taylor's name again. I could just imagine how you felt in that last fight, because that one was back and forth, back and forth. I actually scored it for her as well, so I scored along with the judges on that one. But that was a closely contested bout. Her opponent's name slips me at the moment, but that was an incredible fight. So
dude, it was nerve-wracking to say the least. I was at work watching that. It was at the end of my 6 p.m. strength and conditioning class, and so me and a bunch of the members were just huddled around one iPhone watching the fight, and we're just holding our breath while they're reading the decision. And as soon as they read her name, I just went off. I screamed, yes, yes, and just running throughout the gym. I scared some little kids off the mat. I was excited,
I'm assuming that was your brother then that they were showing on the house cam or whatever.
Yeah, that was my brother AJ. That's Taylor's husband.
That's awesome.
Dude, that's kind of how I was when Miles fought Diego Sanchez, man, because I've known Miles since I was 13 and I was 16 and he was 19. So I knew him before he ever got on the Ultimate Fighter the first time with Brock and Dos Santos. And dude, I'll never forget being at when he fought Gomi. It was not Gomi and Sanchez, because Sanchez was talking so much shit before that fight, and then had like the lamest. And what hurts my soul to this day is the fact that it was Diego Sanchez of all people that used this excuse as to why he lost. But he goes, "Oh man, it's because they had me eat beef tartare the night before." I'm like, man, he whooped your ass for 3 rounds. Man, fuck you, beef tartare. Man. Yeah. And then when I actually full disclosure, I had no clue what the fuck beef tartare was at first, so I had to look to see what it was, and I'm like, well, it was your dumbass fault for thinking eating raw meat the day before a fight's probably a good idea.
It's probably not a good idea, dude. Yeah.
Oh, shit. But hey, dude, I've had a damn good time with this. All of you guys that are watching this, thank you guys for checking us out. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on the podcast platforms, make sure you leave a review. I'll show them on the show. Who the hell knows what we got going on? You got the draft started tonight in WWE. We'll have to talk about that a little bit on Tuesday. And yeah, man, we're going to have to see what comes. So until next time and in the in-between time, Gil, we greatly appreciate you, bro. This can't be the last time we bring you on either, bro.
No, thanks for having me, guys. This was fun.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I'm glad you had fun. So all of you guys checking us out, man. Until next time in the in-between time, peace.